Good evening, everyone. The weather is nice outside, and sadly, I pulled a muscle today, and it still hurts. Right now, I'm relaxing in a couch right now, and today is also a sad day in American and Saudi history. 60 years ago, we lost a civil rights activist named Viola Liuzzo, and 50 years ago, we lost King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. Those are two of the events we cannot forget in both of our countries. So, feel free to sit back and enjoy listening to me. Here we go. In the early 1960s, activism increased in the South, especially for voting rights. In February 1965, a night demonstration for voting rights at the Marion, Alabama courthouse turned violent. State troopers beat and shot Jimmy Lee Jackson, a 26-year-old African-American man, after clubbing protesters. His death sparked the civil rights movement in Dallas County's larger county seat, Selma, which is nearby. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who had been actively involved in efforts to desegregate Birmingham, Alabama, had been contacted by organizers for assistance. On Sunday, March 7, 1965, members of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, under his leadership, organized a protest march. The march was prohibited by Governor George Wallace, but activists disregarded his order. State troopers fractured bones and smashed heads as they clubbed and whipped 600 unarmed marchers who were en route to the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which would allow them to cross the Alabama River and reach the state capitol. The day that became known as Bloody Sunday saw 17 hospital admissions. Liuzzo from Michigan, like many onlookers, was appalled by the pictures that were aired and reported by the national media. On March 9th, there was a second march. At the county end of the bridge, marchers, police, and troopers clashed. However, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. led the marchers back to the base, Brown Church, after the troopers moved aside to allow them to cross. James Reeb, a civil rights activist and Boston-based Unitarian Universalist minister who had traveled to Selma for the second march, was beaten and killed by a white group that evening. For the second march, a large number of other clergy and supporters from all over the nation had also assembled. Liuzzo participated in a demonstration at Wayne State on March 16th. She decided to take further action when Reverend King called for people of all faiths to come. She called her husband to let him know she would be going to Selma, stating that the flight was everybody's flight. She drove to Selma, leaving her kids with friends and family. After getting in touch with the SCLC there, she was assigned to deliver aid, greet and recruit volunteers, and drive volunteers and protesters to and from train stations, bus terminals, and airports. She offered to lend out her 1963 Oldsmobile. The third march started on March 21st, 1965, with over 3,000 participants: blacks, whites, members of the working class, physicians, nurses, rabbis, priests, nuns, housewives, students, actors, and farmers were among them. Andrew Young, Ralph Abernathy, Ralph Bunche, Martin Luther King Jr., and his wife Coretta Scott King were among the many prominent civil rights leaders who took part. The demonstrators took 5 days to make it to the state capital, Montgomery. Other demonstrators joined along the way, and by the final day, about 25,000 marchers had entered Montgomery. There was extensive media coverage of the event. On the first full day, Liuzzo marched and spent the night back in Selma. She returned to the march 4 miles from the finish line on Wednesday, March 24th. That evening on March 25th, there was a celebration featuring national performers. At the first aid station, Liuzzo assisted, and she and other protests... No. On the 25th, they arrived at the state capitol building, which continued to fly a Confederate flag alongside the state one. Speaking to the 25,000-strong crowd, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. referred to the march as a shining moment in American history. Following the march, Liuzzo continued to drive volunteers and marchers from Montgomery back to Selma with the help of a 19-year-old African-American named Leroy Moton. She should not drive to Montgomery because it is extremely dangerous, according to SCLC veteran James Orange. A car attempted to pull Liuzzo and Moton off the road as they were traveling to Selma on Route 80. She and Moton dropped off passengers and returned to Montgomery. They encountered racist and abusive remarks from other patrons at a nearby gas station while they were getting gas. A car carrying 4 white men pulled up alongside Liuzzo, who was stopped at a red light. They followed Liuzzo as she attempted to outrun them after spotting the black man and white woman together. Liuzzo was shot twice in the head, and they took control of the Oldsmobile and fired straight at her. The vehicle crashed into a fence after veering into a ditch. The men, including FBI informant Gary Thomas Rowe Jr., were discovered to be local Ku Klux Klan members. Although Moton was not hit by the bullets, Liuzzo's blood was all over him. As the Klansmen examined their victims, Moton lay still. He asked for assistance after they left. Reverend Leon Riley, who had also been transporting civil rights workers to Selma, was driving a truck when he flagged it down. Detroit is Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church hosted Liuzzo's funeral on March 30th. Numerous well-known figures from the state government, unions, and civil rights movement came to pay their respects. Included United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther, Teamsters President Jimmy Hoffa, Michigan Lieutenant Governor William G. Milliken, Congress on Racial Equality National Leader James Farmer, NAACP Executive Director Roy Wilkins, and Martin Luther King Jr. himself. A burned cross was discovered in front of 4 Detroit residences, including the Liuzzo home, less than 2 weeks after she was murdered. After scandals in the early 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan, which had been active in Detroit in the early 20th century, had begun to decline. This was one of their mediation tactics. Collie Wilkins, 21, FBI informant Gary Rowe, 34, William Eaton, 41, and Eugene Thomas, 43, were among the 4 Klan members in the vehicle, and they were all promptly taken into custody. Within a day, President Lyndon Johnson made the arrests public on national television. He emphasized the good work done by FBI detectives in solving Liuzzo's murder. The fact that one of the men, Gary Thomas Rowe Jr., was an FBI informant was something the government wished to deflect attention from. The 3 defendants were accused by the Department of Justice of conspiring to intimidate African Americans in violation of the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, a civil rights law from the Reconstruction era. Liuzzo's murder was not mentioned in the charges. An all-white, all-male jury found the 3 men guilty on December 3rd, and handed them a 10-year prison sentence, a first in Southern legal history. Alright, that's it. Now let's talk about the assassination of King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. On March 25, 1975, the king was shot point-blank and killed by Faisal bin Musaid, son of his half-brother Musaid bin Abdulaziz. He had returned from a trip to the United States. The murder took place at a majlis, which means a place for sitting, and it is a gathering where the king or other leader invites the populace to enter his home and make requests. Prince Faisal spoke with Kuwaiti delegates in the waiting area who were also anticipating King Faisal's arrival. In keeping with Saudi tradition, King Faisal leaned to kiss his nephew as the prince reached out to embrace him. Prince Faisal pulled out a pistol and shot him at that very moment. The king's chin was struck by the first bullet and his ear was struck by the second. King Faisal was struck by a bodyguard brandishing a sheathed sword. Zaki Yamani, the minister of oil, screamed repeatedly to spare the prince's life. King Faisal was promptly transported to Riyadh's Central Hospital as medical professionals gave him a blood transfusion and massaged his heart. He remained alive. He died soon after, and their efforts were in vain. The assassination was described as claimed both before and following the attack. 3 days of mourning were observed in Riyadh after the murder, during which time all government operations were halted. Several heads of state included Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan of the United Arab Emirates, Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian in charge of Fakistan, the hell with that, Hafez al-Assad of Syria, Idi Amin of Uganda, Houari Boumediene of Algeria, Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr of Iraq, Ghaffar Nimyeri of Sudan, Juan Carlos of Spain, Anwar Sadat of Egypt, Mohammed Daoud Khan of Afghanistan, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto of Pakistan attended King Faisal's funeral service at the King Abdulaziz Mosque in Riyadh. He was buried in Al-Oud Cemetery on March 26, which is a day after the assassination. Khalid, the recently crowned king, sobbed over his brother's body during the funeral. Avenging the death of Prince Khalid bin Musaid, the brother of Prince Faisal bin Musaid, was one theory put forth for the king's murder. Television was installed as a result of King Faisal's secular reforms, which sparked violent protests. In 1966, Prince Khalid was shot dead by a police officer after leading an attack on a television station. Amir bin Mohammed bin Faisal, Faisal's grandson, asserts in the documentary Faisal, Legacy of a King, that the king had cut himself off from the outside world just days before his passing. According to Zaki Yamani, King Faisal shared a dream he had with his own family and friends in which his father, the late King Abdulaziz, was driving and asked him to get in. Yamani continued by saying that Faisal believed his time was running out. According to Islamic beliefs, dreams are important and occasionally contain instructions or messages. Immediately following the attack, Prince Faisal bin Musaid was taken into custody. After the trial, a group of Saudi medical professionals determined that he was sane when he shot the king. Despite his initial official declaration of insanity, he was found guilty of regicide by the court, a country's highest religious court, and sentenced to death. He was publicly beheaded in Riyadh's Deira Square. Well, that's all the history I have for you today. Remember, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. I told that to a lot of people. Okay, I think I should rest for now, so pray that I recover from that muscle pull. Okay, that's all the history I have for you today, and wish you all a good day from the United States and Saudi Arabia. This is Stephen Luke, and I hope you have a nice day. Good day.